There are two main ways of approaching an improvisation. The first way is very directed by the notes that you hear in your head. This is a very engaged way of playing. You're anticipating everything. Typically it results in something very melodic, very close to who you are. Sometimes a little slower playing than the other way that we're going to discuss in this video. But it's a really cool way to approach things and create something new. The other way, which is complementary to that first melodic, more focused way, is more of a mechanical way. And typically that way of playing is heavily influenced by the licks you've learned, the sequences that you've learned, and typically that results in maybe a more flashy type of playing, a little more quote-unquote impressive. It's very directed by your fingers and your comfort on the instrument. Your mind, your brain is not really engaged into that. Your fingers are kind of taking over. The problem with that way of playing is that sometimes it's a little sterile, a little predictable. Today, we're going to still operate in that way of playing, the mechanical aspect, but we are going to take a look at 5 ways to change the way you play mechanically with different ways of playing scales. That's what we're going to study today. Grab your guitar. That's coming up. Hi, my name is David Wallerman. Welcome to this lesson in which we're going to study 5 different ways to play guitar in the mechanical realm. We're going to look at 5 different ways to create scales. If you're new to this channel, I'm so glad you stopped by. Just to give you an idea of what this is about, this channel is not about learning licks, but it's rather a channel about exploring different musical concepts with the goal to help you express yourself, bring out those things that make who you are on the instrument. You are the author. You should be in control of this. The music doesn't really come from this, but from within. And that's what we're doing on this channel. So today we're looking at 5 different ways to playing scales so that your fingers can kind of take over, giving your mind a break, a mental break, so that you can just recharge for the next part of your improv. The backing track we're using, this one, is in G Mixolydian. Okay, you can get this backing track and the 5 different ways that we're going to study today to change the way you play for free by visiting the link below. Enter your email address and I'll be sending you the backing track and the PDF right away. Okay, so let's take a look at the very first way to phrase. I covered this a little bit on the channel, and this is what I call the 3-note per string caged system. The 3-note per string cage system combines both aspects of the cage system and the 3-note per string. So what is the caged system? Well, the cage system is a system in which you can create musical elements. It doesn't work only for scales, but also for chords and all that. You can create those, craft them on the instrument in a way that it preserves the characteristics of the 5 open chords: the C chord, the A chord, the G chord, the E chord, and the D chord. I made another lesson on the cage system on the channel. I'm not going to cover this too much, but typically it's a narrow area of the fretboard, and it's really important when you're operating the cage system to know where your root is, because the scale is going to be built according to that root. So today we're going to look at the 3-note per string cage system, which is really awesome. It blends both worlds together. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at, I'll show you a close-up here. Hopefully this camera works okay. I adjusted it a little bit today. So we are in G, and we're going to look at the low E string, 3rd fret for the G, right here. And the scale is going to be built on the right side of that root. So we are in the E position of the caged system. 3 notes per string, and we're going to try to contain everything in that zone of the fretboard. Typically, 3-note per strings, they start kind of a narrow area here, and then they kind of like finish a little bit higher than the zone you started in. Well, the 3-note per string cage system doesn't do that. It stays kind of focused in that area of the fretboard, resulting in sometimes some notes being repeated, but that's cool because that's going to change the way you play. That's the first way. Here it is, G Mixolydian. We've got 3 notes per string, starting from the low E string to the high E string. We have frets 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7 again, 3, 5, 7 again. Then we have 4, 5, 7, So far, that's the 3-note per string traditional system. And then typically in the 3-note per string, the next note would be on the 5th fret, but we're not going to do that because we're going to stay contained here. So when you switch to the 2nd string, what we'll play is frets 3, 5, 6. So that means that these two notes, this one and this one, are repeated. And then on the 1st string, we have frets 3, 5, 7. The advantage here is that we stay on the narrow area of the fretboard, and it kind of breaks the patterns that you might have because the scale is a little broken here. It's not the traditional 3-note per string. And if you start playing with that, you see what happened there? There's a repetition of note here. You're staying contained here, and that kind of results in a more focused approach because you can always visualize that root. And if you go to a different area of the fretboard, it's a little harder. So it's going to change the way you play a little bit. Some of the phrases that you play are going to be a little different than if you were to do traditional 3-note per string. If you do a sequence like this, 3-note per string, traditional, and you apply that to the cage 3-note per string. Oops, sorry. That's what you get, right? It's a little different. Not drastically different, but enough so that you feel that there's a change. And that's the first way to kind of break the habit of always relying on the same scale system. And that's the first way to change the way you play. The second one is also going to use that 3-note per string system, and I call this Chromatic Spice. So what we're going to do here is visualize that 3-note per string caged system, and we're going to add some chromatic notes. Now, we're going to add some of these chromatic notes kind of randomly, but we're not going to do it all the time, because if we do it all the time, that might kind of mess up the flow of things and complicate things a little bit. You'll have a lot of notes. We're not going to do that. We're only going to use one chromatic note per string, and that's kind of random. So I've got a scale here that you can download below again. I'm going to play that one for you. Here's what we get. I'm following the charts that are here. Pardon my not looking at you here, but we're going to decide to add a chromatic note on that low E string. We'll add one between the 2nd and the 3rd note. Why not? We could have done it between the 1st and the 2nd, but we're not. On the next one, we're going to alternate. We're going to add that chromatic note between the 3rd fret and the 5th. On the next one, we're going to alternate again between the 5th and the 7th. On the next string, so here, you can just add, there's only one choice, so we'll do that. Same thing on the 2nd string. And on the 1st string, we'll add one between the 3rd and the 5th fret. Again, that's kind of random. You decide, and your goal when you're playing is to just use those chromatic notes to spice up your playing a little bit and change a little bit the way that you play. I'm going to demonstrate that on the backing track. Here's a close-up. So this is the Chromatic Spice approach. It kind of sounds a little different. So that was the second way of approaching scales. Now the third way I'm going to share with you is what I call the diagonal symmetry. I just try to make clever titles. Not very clever, but basically what it is that we're operating in a diagonal way this time. So it's not vertical, it's not horizontal, it's kind of a mix of both. And it's symmetrical in the sense that once you learn the first, in this case, the first 7 notes, the rest kind of follow just like that. So we are playing here. This is what we're playing, the 7th note of the scale. We're gonna start with a 3 note per string, still in G mixolydian. We've got on the low E string frets 3, 5, 7. On the next string 3, 5, 7. We're gonna add a note that we're gonna slide to 1 fret above that last note. So we're sliding from the 7th to the 8th. And same notes, right? Still in G mixolydian, but we've got that thing going on. That pattern that I'm using, in this case I'm doing index, ring, pinky, index, ring, pinky, slide with pinky. Same exact thing happens an octave higher from where you started. So now we're starting on the 4th string, 5th fret. Same exact thing. We've got the 7 notes of the mixolydian mode. And then we can repeat that an octave higher. So in this case, we are on the 2nd string, 8th fret. So that's 8, 10, 12, 8, 10, 12, slide. Kind of different, right? It kind of breaks the habit. I'm going to play a little bit using that. My playing is a little different, even though we're still using the same exact notes. It's going to flow a little differently. So you notice that I slowed down a little bit because my fingers are not completely used to that pattern. It's kind of new, and that's the whole idea here. Breaking the habit so that you slow down and come up with mechanical things that are a little different than the scales that you're used to. All right, now the 4th way is, I'll confess, it's the way that I'm the least used to, but I think it's a really cool idea, I think, and there's probably a bunch of different things we can do. It's what I call the reverse symmetry. Reversed symmetry. Reverse symmetrical way. You'll know why, because you'll see why, because instead of going this way, symmetrical, we're going this way, symmetrical. So we're going to start an octave higher. Instead of starting on the low E string 3rd fret, we're going to start an octave higher, low E string 15th fret. We're going to still do 3 notes per string here. So 1, 2, 3. Then this last note that I'm playing is the major 3rd. We're going to find that note on the 5th string, which is on the diagonal opposite. So we are on the 5th string, 14th fret. So we've got something like this. And then we just continue in that way. That last note will be the first note of the next string. So altogether, this is what we have. Kind of different, right? I really slowed down here. I'm going to try to come up with some ideas using that particular way of playing that scale. Here's our backing track. Again, bear with me. I'm not really used to that one. We'll see what comes up. I'm not used to it at all, but that's kind of cool. And if I were to do the exercise that where am I? Here. The exercise that I want you to do is just download those charts, the PDF, play the backing track, loop it, and just force yourself to use that particular way of playing that scale. And that's the 4th way that can change the way you play. And finally, the 5th way is super useful because it's borrowing some elements from the beloved pentatonic scale that we know, or the 2 note per string pentatonic scale. But we're only taking that element from the pentatonic scale, 2 notes per string. We're staying in a narrow area of the fretboard, just like the traditional minor pentatonic or major pentatonic. And we are just randomly taking some notes. And when I mean random, I mean random. So in this case, this is what I came up with, something very simple. We've got from the low E string to the high E string, frets 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, then 4, 5, 3, 5, and 3, 5. Pretty cool, pretty easy to play. And the cool thing with that is that we are preserving the characteristic of that pentatonic scale, which means that we can phrase, you know, all those sequences that we're used to playing, but it's going to sound a little different because we're targeting different notes. I'm going to jam a little bit using that particular shape. Still in G mix in. And so forth. So there's the fifth way. Now there are a lot of other ways, and really the goal here is not to think, all right, I am operating in this type of way of organizing my fretboard, and that's how I'm going to make my music. That's not the ultimate goal. That's what you do when you practice, but the ultimate goal is to basically inject into your fingers different ways of playing those scales, which at some point your fingers are going to take over. They're going to start automatically playing. And the whole idea here is not to build your whole musical speech using the mechanical aspects, but to blend that with the ba-da-ba-ba-dun, da-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. And so forth. It's to blend those mechanical things with the more vocal line type of thing where you're singing and replicating what you're singing. The reason is if you only rely on, you know, the mental way where you're singing and playing everything, it's very demanding mentally, and you might be a little stagnant at some point. So to recharge that, you rely on the pattern. I don't have to think about that kind of playing. So that's what I have for you. The backing track that I was playing over and the PDF that I was following right here, this one right here, can be downloaded for free by visiting the link below. And if this is your first visit, I really appreciate you spending this 20 minutes, not quite yet, this time with me studying the instrument. And you should consider subscribing because every week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays is new video day. At 1 p.m. US Mountain Time, a new video comes out, and I don't want you to miss out if you like this kind of thing. Thanks so much. Give this video a like, share it around, and get the charts below. I'll see you very soon. Practice well.